Today's discussion will be presented in 3 sections since we are recording it for a radio broadcast on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. You're welcome to post questions and comments during the session, and we'll try to answer them online. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Temin, host and managing editor of the Federal Drive on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Pamela Wise-Martinez, Chief Cloud and Enterprise Data Architect at the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. William Tinston is Program Executive Officer for Information Operations at the Defense Logistics Agency. Adam Clater is Chief Architect in the Office of the Chief Technologist at Red Hat's North America Public Sector. And Shane Barney is the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services at Homeland Security. Great to have you all here. Our subject today is software and secure development and the modern techniques and strategies that agencies are using. So just to kind of set the scene, why don't we start with what some of the big software projects that you have going, what the missions, what the applications are, and some of the strategies you're using, whether waterfall or some of the new modern agile techniques. I imagine there's a combination at the agencies. And Shane, we'll start with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. USCIS has aggressively pursued cloud and cloud environments in the last few years. We've moved roughly 60% or so of our infrastructure into the cloud. Most of our systems run out of there now. We are aggressively moving what few systems we have left in data centers to the cloud. And therefore, the adoption of more modern sort of software practices, development practices, have been very important to us. We have really embraced an agile development environment. Every aspect of our development now, as far as I know, is agile. We employ a significant development team to do so. So you're looking in the ag to 2,800, 3,000 or so developers. To constantly develop and constantly issue new releases, and whether they be minor releases every other day, major releases every other week, we are always pushing code. Therefore, security at that level, and when you're that involved, and it becomes critical in terms of staying ahead of that. If you get behind in that kind of environment, you're really going to get behind. Not only that, security cannot be applied after the fact. So we've really, on the security side, we've really had to change the nature of how we view information security. We've stopped looking at it as a sort of a checkbox on a form, and really gone to more a risk-based model. And we approach all aspects of our information security practices with the notion of risk. That means we have an ongoing authorization program that therefore, instead of looking at our systems every 3 years in a regular kind of FSMA sort of cycle, we're actually looking at them at every single solitary month. Now, clearly there's a cost associated with that, not necessarily, well, I'm sure there's a monetary cost, but there's also a cost in personnel. To do this sort of level of activity is not easy. It requires a lot of investment in personnel and time. It requires a great deal of training of your personnel, and a lot of trust has to be placed on them. We actually bake our ISOs right into the development process. They're there on the ground, and with the idea that they become our eyes and ears. They see the things that are happening. They meet with the developers. They're at the development sessions, and each time they actually know the code. They know their environments. Because we rely on them to know how things, when a new vulnerability is exposed or something new is coming down the line, we rely on them to know how that applies to their systems.
And just a quick question
Sure.
on some of the applications. Are these deployed for agents within USCIS, or are these to the public?
So we're going to have, the one that most people are going to probably be familiar with mostly is Ellis. It's,
Right.
tends to get in the news a lot. Ellis is a very aggressive program. Immigration is to tackle immigration and to deal with a system that tries to take a very paper-intensive process and turn it into an electronic process. It's very challenging, very, very challenging. If you spend any time in our service centers anywhere in the nation, we have 5 of them, you'll get a full grasp and understanding for the volume that they deal with on a daily basis. So to develop a system that handles that electronically is very, very challenging. I would say that the waterfall approach simply would never work. The agile approach has worked and has continually worked. It allows us to sort of take bites out of that animal as we go along, as opposed to trying to take on the entire process. We have other programs that are coming along. The Viz, E-Verify, people are familiar with in the business side. But then we're also, we have an ICAM public program as well. All these are public-facing systems that are all utilizing agile principles for development. So we're releasing code on a consistent and constant basis.
Okay, a lot going on there. Let's move over to the Defense Logistics Agency, DoD setting. William Tinston, where do you begin with what with what the DLA is doing?
Thanks, Tom. We have at DLA approximately 46 defense business systems that we manage, and about 250, 270, it's a moving number, other applications that we manage on a regular basis. Now, as we talk through this today, what we're really trying to do is get away from managing systems. Systems are really a concept that we want to get away from. We want to abstract the user experience from the systems that are providing the capabilities and really have conversations with our users about capabilities, and I think that really fits into the Agile model and the DevOps as we move forward. So of those 46, maybe I said 56 the first time, it's 46 defense business systems we have. They run the gamut from financial systems. We do the DLA financial system as well as the Fourth Estate, which is the other DoD agency's financial system called DAI. We do retiree and annuitant pay. We support the procurement space within DoD very broadly. So it's a big portfolio, and I look forward to the conversation about how we're trying to deliver capability in that.
So, but it's safe to say you're trying to migrate a lot of those systems, the ones you own particularly, to a totally different architecture and totally different code base? So
really it's about, yes, in some cases we want to get to a totally different code base. We think about it from a multi-speed IT perspective, right? We've got big ERPs that have been in place for 15, 20 years. They provide core capability to the enterprise. Delivering through the ERPs has traditionally been a waterfall method for us over the last 15 years. We're getting away from that. I would say at the moment about 25% of our delivery efforts are done through Agile. I'm trying to drive that to 100%. And we're probably at 10% on DevOps, and I'm really trying to push that out and tie the security in. And the idea, the pony in it for us is we want better business outcomes for the people that are using the systems. And to do that, we want to engage the business users up front. We want the discussions about what we're delivering iteratively to include what the technology can bring to the table, so they're not off in another room writing requirements for 6 months, toss them over to us, and then we spend 6 months trying to deliver, and then before we get to DevOps, we spend 6 months doing regression testing after that. It's 18 months and we're delivering something that's not meeting the business need. So that's what we're trying to get away from. Iterative, quick delivery, and improved outcomes for the business side.
And do you have a lot of contractors doing this, or do you also have
federal
coders?
We split about 50-50. I've got about 1,000 government folks, and I think we've got about 1,000 contractors, and we've taken a very deliberate effort to make sure we get that balance right and look what the skills are that we're best off contracting for and what the skills are that we're best off maintaining in-house. My biggest fear when we look towards outsourcing things, bringing contractors in, is you can always do that effectively once, but you need to be able to be a good buyer of those skills and a good manager of your business capabilities going forward. And if you hand everything to a contractor, how do you do that well the next time when you have to face competition again and bring somebody else in?
Okay, good. And for the perspective of a small independent agency, Pamela Wise-Martinez, Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation.
That's okay. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. As you said, our organization is fairly small, but we have a big mission. That mission is obviously paying pension benefits to those who have the fortune or misfortune of an organization that has been closed or whose pension has, been taken over by PBGC. So in that sense, we have a really big mission. On the other hand, we've been around about 40 years or so. We're not an agency like, say, Treasury or Social Security Administration, things like that. But when it comes to delivering software, when it comes to delivering infrastructure, I think they really do a great job. So my role coming on board was to help focus the cloud initiatives, sort of streamline their processes, not attempting to more or less change everything, you know, from the bottom up, but really trying to look at what's being done really well and support their initiatives as they move forward. So, for example, when I came on board about 2 years ago, they had an agile initiative, and quite frankly, for a small organization, that's, you know, that's a unique and sort of interesting thing to have to go through when you have small teams. And then when you look at the security teams, obviously they're even smaller when you compare that to the delivery cycle. So coming on board, one of the first things that I did, I noticed that these teams weren't really communicating as well as I thought that they could. And as you can see in the DevOps as well as DevSecOps world, that communication and culture and people are really the keys to making things work well. Now, that wasn't my focus. My focus was really to help deliver a better streamlined integrated process between the security teams, the project managers, the architects, and acquisitions. So we developed a process by which the process between all four of those different areas, what I call work streams, are better communicating and better integrated. They know what the, you know, each component needs and how quickly they need it. Now, that isn't an agile methodology. What happens is this is a process by which it's sort of the before segment. So you can kind of map out whether it will be an agile initiative or whether it will be, you know, our standard, not necessarily waterfall, more of a RUP process. I guess you can more of a traditional approach. But today, because the systems at PBGC, many of them that are really key to our pensioners are really, you know, they're older systems. And so from that perspective, an older system, you know, although you're not necessarily running towards an agile type of methodology, however, you realize that the customer has really been clamoring for this change. So what do? Are you going to deliver the system in agile methodology, or are you going to go traditional, a 9-month, 18-month, you know, 2-3 year process? So in many cases, the agile methodology was used to support those projects that were older modernization that was necessary for example, calculation of benefits, future benefits, economic analysis, those kinds of things. That's where the agile methodology really took lead. However, when you're delivering a, you know, SaaS or COTS, if you will, product and so forth, wasn't so necessary. Right. But I see, you know, security at the front end being a key component to any methodology, any framework, and that's where EA comes in. So EA says, you know, enterprise architecture comes in and says, you know, how are we doing this? How is the SDLC working? What are the end results? What is the performance to the organization? So we're tying technology and business together. And so, quite frankly, if IT isn't delivering the way it should, there's certainly a need for the enterprise architectures to get involved.
Okay,
so,
and we're going to get back to that in some more detail as we go through. And Adam, yeah, absolutely.
So I thought you made a really, really good point when you said it's not always agile, right? We can't be agile fanatics. Every delivery of capability has its own peculiarities, and you got to look at the specific situation and decide what's going to make you successful there. Yes. So I loved hearing you make that point.
Yes,
all right. Good. And Adam Claytor from Red Hat, maybe explain, if you would, sometimes I hear Agile and DevOps used interchangeably, and I'm not sure that's quite accurate.
Yeah. No, that's fair, and I think that before we tackle that, I want to talk a little bit about the theme that we've heard sort of from everyone. There is no one-size-fits-all, right? And I think what this really comes down to is as you look at approaches within your agency, you really need to have choice. in sort of your decision-making process. Is this workload suitable for a public cloud? Is it suitable for a private cloud? Is it suitable for public cloud A or B? What's going to be the best cost-benefit analysis for the mission based on that decision-making process, right? So I think what's really important to understand as you go through this process is that that analysis that you guys are talking about doing so much of on suitability of any particular workload for cloud or for DevOps or for Agile, we've got to make sure that the agency is presented with a variety of choices around that. DevOps versus Agile, they very much go hand in hand. You can certainly do Agile development without DevOps. I think DevOps and DevSecOps, which it sounds like a lot of folks are really moving towards, would be characterized by frequent release cycles, regular updates, and then sort of that idea of continuous authorization, right? Which is I can assert at any time, generally, a month, for example, which is a much better time than maybe once every 3 years, as you said. Yeah, I think we all agree on that one. I can assert that my security profile around this application does fit sort of the spec that we've negotiated quite often. That's right, the risk model that we've negotiated with the business and with sort of the certifications that we have to maintain. Whereas Agile, you could do Agile development and only do a deploy every 3 months, right, or whatever your sprint cycle defined. When you bring those two together, it really becomes about the elimination of risk and the elimination of waste, right, in the process. And I think marrying those two together with Agile DevSecOps is really where we start to reach sort of this developer nirvana, where our developers focus on delivering business intelligence and business functionality and spend a lot less time thinking about how am I going to build an infrastructure to execute on the mission, right? That needs to be sort of table stakes. We need to say, okay, this is going to be a platform, and this is going to be the infrastructure that we deliver on, and let's get out of the business of engineering and re-engineering and DIYing infrastructure, and let's move forward with the value to the business.
Okay, good place to take a break on this discussion, Building a DevSecOps Mindset in Government, sponsored by Red Hat, here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.